Good morning, my listeners. This is Wiktor Doctor, and this is another episode of Good Morning BSS World podcast. Today with my special guest, who is Stephan Fricke from Deutscher Outsourcing Verband. Hello, Stephan.
Hello, Wiktor. Thank you for inviting me.
How are you doing?
Yeah, very well. I mean, times are challenging, but we are doing well, and we also have a lot of activities with our association, despite that we can really organize events, for example, which is an important part, obviously. But we are very busy with other activities, of analysis and these type of things.
You are the head of German Outsourcing Association for years. Since I remember, we have met a number of times during your excellent events in Berlin. We had also a lot of chats in between. And the reason why I invited you to this podcast is just to have a discussion about German approach to outsourcing industry. So today's meeting, today we will have a discussion about how actually the German market takes care of the outsourcing industry. There will be some hints and tips about how to work with German market and some extra stories which Stephan has for us. So, Stephan, do German market like to work with outsourcers or no?
Yes, German companies, of course, like to work with outsourcing service providers. There's certain singularities which may differ a little bit from the UK market, the US or the Netherlands, for example, or the Nordics even. But generally, there is a need for outsourcing, but there's also a certain preference for working with external partners for some old and some new reasons, obviously. So basically today what we see is that outsourcing is one tool of German companies, of German CIOs, let's put it this way, if you focus a little bit on the IT part of outsourcing, is one tool in order to handle increasing complexity in the IT operations, for example. And a lot of people use outsourcing to lighten the load, let's say, on the department, because, as I said, processes and operations become more and more complex. On the other hand, we have an immense lack of IT talent in Germany. The official number from the government is about 124,000, something like this, open positions in IT today, which is significant for an economy that is based on, there's also very export orientated, let's say. And it's based on technology innovation. If I remind you on the super strong automotive industry, for example, and if you sit today even in middle class car, the technology in a car is very different than a car you could buy like even 5 years ago. So, and this provides or puts obviously a lot of pressure on one sector more than the other, obviously, but the German economy is very technology orientated, and therefore such a significant lack of IT talent is critical, and therefore outsourcing is one tool besides automation, for example, besides training employees and these type of things. But a lot of companies use outsourcing. At the moment, recent studies say that about 42% increase the amount of outsourcing. So it's even something that people or companies tend to use more because, as I said, of the complexity in the IT operations. It's growing, but other tools like automation of processes, for example, is said to be, or 70% of people say they use process automation in the IT, within the IT operations, obviously. And what is a very good sign is that companies have started and continuously restructuring IT operations. And when I talk to IT managers today in German companies, that's very much visible. From you see new departments like, if we come back to the outsourcing topic, vendor management departments, which haven't been there basically 5 years ago. Or when we take a look at the IT purchasing department, that looks different than still 3 or 5 years ago. Also, the decision making on certain aspects has shifted. When we come back to a position like a vendor manager today has way more influence than IT comparable IT purchasing manager like 5 years ago, for example. And that goes very far. And also, if you take a look at the age, let's take a look at the age of CIOs today in German companies. We see that fairly young CIOs we have today in positions, in CIO positions in companies, especially when companies have a strong need for digitization, for turnaround, these things.
Okay, let's make one step back about this outsourcing. Do German companies rather prefer the outsourcers who are locally based in Germany, or they are open for finding out support from other countries? And then if other countries, then is it preferable to rather look for short distance partners, like for example Europe, or rather long distance partners who are based in India or Africa or some other parts of the world?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and something we answer regularly, but the answer obviously is changing, which is a good thing, because let's say the German approach to working with external partners and to outsourcing and whatsoever is rather conservative, let's say. So German companies prefer to have, if we want to put it in a row of preferences, then we would start with in-house operations. So a company obviously prefers to have a very strong in-house operation, to have control and to be able to change and influence how things work and processes and whatsoever. Obviously, there are some limitations to it, especially when we take a look at mid-market companies. Like if we talk about companies like BMW or Siemens, for example, these companies traditionally don't have much problems to hire new IT talent because they are attractive employers. Benefits are good, salaries are good, looks good, and whatsoever. So the environment is very good. On the other hand, the German economy is rather characterized by a high number of mid-market companies. So companies that have 500,000 to even 3,000 employees. And then companies may not, maybe not located in Berlin or Hamburg or Munich or whatsoever, but rather in more rural areas, which are not so attractive, obviously, for young people in the IT field. This is a strong preference, and that's what we see on companies that people still hire in Germany, or prefer hiring growing internal IT instead of increasing external. But as I said, there's a certain need and necessity to work with external partners, and here as well, people tend to look first to companies close by, meaning in Germany. And there's a lot of comfort working with companies in your own country, in your vicinity, basically, because first of all, visiting is easier, the communication is easier, the business mentality is the same, and so on. I fully understand this preference. Again, we see on IT service providers in Germany that they have similar or basically the same problems as internal IT departments, meaning a lot of IT service providers are not able to take on new projects or have to delay projects because they are pretty basically understaffed. Now, one way for these IT service providers is to say, okay, we go to a neighboring country. For example, there are a couple of German IT service providers who have development centers or delivery centers in other countries, like in Poland, for example. And that's one approach which becomes more and more popular. So I was criticizing earlier, like 2-3 years ago, I was really criticizing IT service providers in Germany for the lack of interest to invest in capacities and resources, but also in knowledge outside of Germany, because it's actually a logical approach to do so. But that has changed a bit, and we see a lot of service providers who operate also outside of Germany. Then, if we take a look at the other aspect is shared services, so to build captive organizations, and it's also a complete different topic where we can have probably a separate podcast on, because it's also relatively complex and there have been a lot of changes. And the shared service sector in Germany is traditionally strong because of the way companies try to centralize and optimize IT operations, but also business process operations like HR, finance, and so on. But then again, the shared service sector was way more, was adapting the approach to open international centers and delivery centers way earlier. Like we have centers in Romania, but also in Poland and in Hungary that operate already for 10-15 years or something like this. And then if we take the other aspect that companies directly outsource, this is also something that is increasing, and it has become easier for companies for several aspects. We can talk about the maturity level of foreign service providers, because like 10 years back, even we've seen companies like traditionally Indian companies. At this time, India was very strong in outsourcing, and they were very successful in the American market, and they tried to go to the German market, failed in the first attempt, and figured out to via acquisitions, for example. But today that looks a little bit different, because we have a lot of mid-sized, very mature service providers, very professionally operating service providers available in neighboring countries. In Poland, if I take a look at the service provider landscape in Poland, there's no question that you can find a professional, very qualified service partner for all kinds of processes. And if it comes to technology, even when we look at countries like Ukraine, who have been traditionally very technology orientated, where you can find anything from any knowledge, any experience in technology, also for legacy systems, for example. Even that has improved, and so German companies today know way more about outsourcing. They know how to handle it, how to manage it. And as I said, a lot of companies have invested in installing vendor management departments and so on. And if you talk today to vendor managers, these are very smart people, these are very experienced people who know exactly what to look for. And on the other hand, also usually a lot of sourcing consultants are involved in structuring sourcing activities, structuring sourcing strategies, but also helping in finding, evaluating, and making sourcing deals happen.
Okay, so it means that if I was, for example, supplier of outsourcing services, then I should go to the company, this vendor manager, who actually should verify myself as a service provider, and then to discuss the possible next steps. Yeah.
Yeah, that's correct. The vendor manager is obviously a very good contact, because this is the people who deals with, and it's also the person or the department. Let's talk about the department. The vendor management department is the department, the point of contact who's most open and benefits most of knowing service provider landscape, knowing local conditions, knowing best practices, and these kind of things, and also has a lot of influence within the company and a lot of within the company about certain need of sourcing. They know, okay, what comes in 2 years, what comes this year, next year, whatsoever. They know the requirements. They're in contact with the different divisions and so on. And it's also a very easy point of contact in terms of understanding each other. So sometimes earlier, if you talk to an IT director whose main responsibility is to operate IT, to grow it maybe and so on, and to manage it, has maybe too much as a task and responsibilities to be open enough and to be a very good peer to talk to about outsourcing in general, because it's just so many other things.
Okay, so one extra question: if we could take a look on the countries who are providing outsourcing services to German market, if you were to identify the, let's say, top 3 leaders, who would that be? What kind of countries are delivering the most outsourcing services to Germany?
It's not such an easy question to answer. I understand the question and I know why you ask it, but I tell you why. Look, if you look at large organizations like the Deutsche Bank, for example, who has like a couple of thousand people in the Philippines, and you try to put the numbers together, then it's not something that reflects on the not reality, but I think if we look at Poland, Poland is extremely for Germany an extremely good location to outsource, because it's so diverse from so many different locations. You don't have to go to Warsaw. You don't even have to go to Krakow. You can find so many different locations within Poland, so that whatever need I have as a German company on requirements can basically be met only in Poland. So therefore, and if you take a look at the numbers, Poland is certainly standing on top of the list of Germany. Then again, we have a lot of shared service operations, sizable shared services operations in Romania, for example, as well as in Hungary, as well as in India. Yeah, like Bombardier, I think is only. Not only, I don't want to say anything wrong, but has strong preference for operations in India. So it depends a little bit on the sector. It depends a little bit on the company itself, where's it coming from, and so on. If I look at the banking sector, for example, I would certainly recommend something nearshore Poland, something within the EU, just to be compliant and stay compliant and have less headache with the compliance, with the legal compliance on data protection, for example, with my service provider. Then again, application development, you are not really bounded or so much. Let's say you don't have to focus so much on the legal framework that the EU provides. The same goes for some business processes and so on. So
I believe that Bulgaria, Romania, and Belarus are also quite active when it comes to the delivery of IT outsourcing services to Germany, isn't that?
Yeah, certainly. Belarus more technology oriented. I think there is some more potential for Belarus in Germany. Bulgaria has an interesting proposition in terms of captive centers, actually, because we also have different locations besides Sofia, Plovdiv, for example, and the general ambition to provide good conditions for sourcing companies, for service providers, but also for foreign investments is very good, also within in Europe. Then again, if we look at other destinations like Armenia, for example, also very technology oriented, very friendly, which is always an aspect. So you want to deal with nice people, obviously, but it's people in Armenia are very easy to talk to, very competent. The education is very good. They start very early in school with technical education. So there are a lot of good things that are recognized in Armenia. Even Angela Merkel was visiting one of the education initiatives in Armenia. So there's a certain recognition also on these emerging destinations.
Okay, let's jump in into your association. German Outsourcing Association, Deutscher Outsourcing Verband is. When did you start, by the way? What was the year of starting your activities?
We started unofficially early in 2010, officially in November 2010 as the registration went through.
So it's already a decade behind you.
Yeah.
Okay, and for our listeners, what is the main goal, or what is the main area of activities the association does?
Generally, what we want to do and what we do is supporting and easing and improving the conditions for outsourcing in Germany, and that includes a lot of areas, from an informative mission where we gather and publish information, where we make information available free of charge. It's a very important aspect. We operate after non-profit principles, and through analyzing opportunities, analyzing conditions, like with our series of outsourcing destination guides, we do that pretty intensively, where we provide an publication series on destinations, on locations, on sourcing locations, so that people involved and interested in sourcing actually learn about and don't have to do the legwork for themselves in analyzing the local conditions and finding the opportunities and so on, which can be pretty tedious. So with that, we provide very direct support for vendor managers, but anybody basically involved in outsourcing, like also consultants and so on. But networking, making sure people are known, providing increasing transparency in outsourcing provider landscape, which sounds a little bit vague, but it's a very concrete thing, because today, if I'm looking for a service provider, often people still start with a Google search, and that's not necessarily the most effective way to do that. So therefore, we try to make information available about outsourcing service providers and so on, so that people have it easier to find a number of potentially fitting service providers, technology partners, business process partners, and so on, and also have it easier to evaluate their capabilities. The same applies to contacts. So often, obviously, people don't know who to talk to, and then we can be a central point where people write us or call us. Like yesterday, a company called and said, "Look, we are looking for. We have these projects. We are looking for service providers and informational service providers. Can you help us?" And then we do that even free of charge. So the same applies to investments, like that company comes to us and says, look, we are looking to extend our delivery center for Germany, and we are looking for German speakers. Where can we go to? And then due to the cooperation between us, for example, as well, we basically can answer such questions relatively easy. And then on the other hand, other activities also include individual market research. Companies say, look, we want to expand to the German market. We are looking for venture partners, for example, or we want to know how does this certain segment looks like, and then we take a look what data we have available, or we do an individual analysis, these type of things.
And how many members do you have now?
We have a little bit over 1,000 members, and that consists of buyer side of consultants, service providers, government, investment promotion organizations, these type of things.
That's a significant number. Stephan, but this is not the only thing which you do, because for those who don't know it yet, you are also standing behind Outsourcing Journal, which is a web platform when you share a lot of content related to outsourcing industry. This is also a place where we can find out, for example, about those outsourcing destination guides, which you mentioned a few sentences ago. What else we can find on Outsourcing Journal pages?
Honestly, we started working on the Outsourcing Journal to restructure it a little bit and to modernize it. But the important part here is the information and the way and the type of information we publish via the Outsourcing Journal. First of all, it's free of charge, it's without registration, and so on. This content is available. This content is available in English, partly in German language, and we have a readership base from Germany, Austria, Switzerland, obviously over Europe. We get a lot of feedback from the Americans, for example, and so on. But what we focus on is more shared knowledge. It's less a platform to advertise, basically, but more a platform to share knowledge from people who simply know what they are doing in shared services, in outsourcing, in IT services, in process automation, and so on. We publish topics on management, on transformation, shared services, on locations, obviously, on IT, on business process automation, new technology, intelligent technologies, and so on. Company news as well.
Thanks for that. I have one extra question about the other area, which actually you started quite recently, because I think, if I'm not wrong, it was like 4 years ago when you entered this robotics, automation, RPA, and this became a strong element of the whole activities of yours. It was even added as a part to the annual event, which usually takes place on October or November in Berlin. How does the RPA looks like in Germany?
So the process automation in Germany is something that a lot of people are interested in. A lot of people are doing it. A lot of people try to develop it, and a lot of people try to offer it. A lot of even IT service providers, for example, turned it a little bit and said, okay, we also offer you the automation of processes in cooperation with whatever service providers like UiPath, who provide the robots. And that's why we took an emphasis on process automation as well, is that it's a very complex thing. It's a very complex topic, and it's also a topic that is led a little bit by the service provider side. And that provides not a very realistic picture on process automation, because there's a lot of marketing buzz included, and service providers are criticized for this and that. But the general thing what we see is that it is an issue for CIOs, and it's a topic that it's rather on C-level dealt with. But the long-term success is the issue. So we have companies that had short-term success with like marketing automation, these type of things. But a long-term and a broader application of process automation is still something we need to wait a little bit for, and companies still need to, I wouldn't say play around with, but still have to gather more experience. And then it's also something we come back to, something I talked about earlier, the lack of skilled people in Germany. And now I was only talking about IT people. Now we are talking about people that are needed who understand the process side, who understand basically what's happening here. What is the objective with this process? What is it doing? Where is it coming from? Where is it going? And on the other side, somebody who at the same time understands a certain level of technology, who can work with robots, with an automation platform in order to automate such processes. And this is from what we see, it's a big issue. What is rarely addressed, not even in studies, what we see from HR people, for example, on the labor market, and we see that companies, what they do, what I said also earlier, is that they among restructuring, for example, and one tool companies have is to retrain existing employees. There's an example of a German bank who says, okay, we take out a couple of people from the bank shop or subsidiary where people go and open their accounts and stuff. They take out people from there where they see, okay, it's not needed, or we downsize whatsoever. They take out people from there, put them into a training, into a 12 months paid training with paid salaries and so on, to train months. These people. 12 months. I don't think it's too much, I think, but train them on process automation and these type of things in order to build in-house capacities. And I think it's a very good thing to do, because these people understand the processes already. So the only thing what you need is to train these people on certain technology issues, on partly development, robots, on platforms, and also on how processes can be optimized, can be moved, can be to get a bigger picture of what a process does and what does it contribute to the organization and the operation.
Stephan, thank you very much. It's already over half an hour behind us, and I got from you a number of valuable information. I guess that we will come back to our talk sometime in the future just to extend this knowledge. But for the moment, if we were to give an advice to our listeners and viewers, where to find you and your association, what's the best way to contact you?
Anybody can look me up on LinkedIn. Stephan Fricke. Fricke is Stephan's the first name, obviously. In German Outsourcing Association, you can Google German Outsourcing Association. You can Google Deutscher Outsourcing Verband, which is the German name. You can Google Outsourcing Journal. We usually end up among the first places, so it's not such a problem to find me. If any company wants to extend or wants to expand to the German market, we provide certain type of advisory, and we gladly answer first questions, also without any official engagement on that. Yeah, so please feel free to contact me on any questions market related, also on the European level, since we maintain relationships to all kinds of countries and locations, like with you, for example, where we have an extremely good relationship over the last couple of years. Please contact me.
Yeah, I really do appreciate our cooperation and this partnership. This is actually a great know-how sharing, and even some mindstorming from time to time. And
Yes.
I must tell you that I do look very much forward to the time when your events are going to be started one more time, because from my perspective, this is a huge opportunity to build international contacts, both
Yes.
the German market as it is and the companies who are present over there, but also with the outsourcing suppliers who are coming to this event from all around the world. I do remember people who we met who was representing Philippines, Egypt, not mentioning the European countries as well. So yeah, I do really look forward to those events, Stephan.
Yeah, me too. I actually tried to make it happen in October this year, but the German government is really cautious about the situation around the COVID. So I have difficulties to evaluate if that's going to happen or not. But if anybody wants to make a note in the calendar, it's beginning of October, and contact me or sign up for our newsletter or visit our outsourcing journal on a regular basis, you will certainly find information what is going to happen.
I will keep my fingers crossed to have it organized, and of course, I will make sure to add to the description of today's episode all the links you mentioned. So just to make people easy to find you, find the association, find the outsourcing journal. And thank you very much, Stephan, for today's chat.
Thank you, Wiktor. It was my pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.